I thought somebody was giving me a signal that was stop in the name.
Look at you,
Welcome.
baby.
This is
Welcome.
Nutra Voices. I'm Dr. V, and this is In Depth, where we dig deep in the trenches of what matters. And tonight we are having some good conversation. We're really going to go deep with anxiety. And I have to admit to you, I did not know there was so much to anxiety.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just hear anxiety, you think nervous. Okay, it's what I get every time I have to, do the panel. So is what a lot of people get when they have to do public speaking and all of that. I mean, so you just think, okay, I know all about this until you're actually doing some research,
Right.
and then you realize it just kind of keeps on going. So there's a lot to it. But right now, I want to talk about our personal. So your anxiety, what does it look like? Because it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give y'all a visual real quick. The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think of each character,
Right.
and I want you to visualize that they're in the room right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be Dorothy. Who are you?
I'll be the Tin Man.
You're the Tin Man. I thought about you being the Tin Man. And Jill, who might you be?
Today I would be Toto, the yap yap dog.
And E, that leaves you as the
Tin Man. We have to share that.
you the Tin Man.
Of course, you guys.
You can't be the lion or the scarecrow.
You guys got to be.
Because I
Oh,
got
darn.
courage. I got courage.
Okay, because I
got
put
hurt.
the guy behind the camera as Oz.
As Oz.
Yeah.
The great
Anyway,
The
so
great and
I just
powerful.
say that because when I think about anxiety, I think about how fear, worry, and all these other things kind of connect like they're related, right?
Right.
And so I just can't help but think about each character in The Wizard of Oz was
And-
suffering from some form of anxiety.
Right. And it's great that you bring that up. That's a great analogy. And I'm glad that you worked that in because as I say about the Tin Man, an analogy of sometimes you're anxious with the relationships and feelings and connecting with people. And the Tin Man, he wanted a heart because his heart, he didn't have the feeling. He could not make those human connections. And that's what a lot of our think about anxiety when you're meeting somebody new,
Yes.
going to a new school, going to a new job, simple things that we do regularly in life. But, we need those human feelings and those human emotions to be able to
Interactions, yes.
interact. And if we don't have them, it makes us feel awkward or off-putting.
That's right.
Makes you feel awkward?
I'm saying as a general consensus.
Oh, because
Right.
it doesn't for me.
Okay, so
I could
since
be-
you're the Tin Man, what do you?
I could be standoffish. Purposely.
Well, we
because-
all could do that.
No, I'm just
purposely.
saying I could be standoffish because some fact I have a whole wall up anyway.
And
So
no
I'm-
heart.
So so I don't let people to. If I let you in, you have to really be. You really
You have to
keep-
matter.
Yeah, you have to matter because
And that's that.
I could be
Okay.
I could be in a club and stand off to myself.
And if you don't believe that, that's a part of anxiety because you're anxious to let people in and connect with you, and that's what
I
I
ain't
think.
shouldn't let nobody do nothing.
That-
But listen, Jill, did you want to comment?
Well, I was just going to say that I think it was you that just said it, or maybe it was you. I don't know. People with anxiety, not just people who are introverted or whatever. An actual anxiety disorder, which we're going to talk about the difference. Your space, your personal space is a lot different than somebody who doesn't have that, for example. Wider as I mean, like sometimes you want people further away from you, not in your space. And you could be a very social person. You could be a social butterfly, but it doesn't mean that you are out there comfortable
Right.
doing it. So you want the perimeter around you. You want to be able to go where you want to go. You don't
That's
want
right.
people in your
Yeah,
space.
so that's what I was saying about myself the
Yep.
other day, and so I feel like that's the person I am. I like to be alone. I'll say with my dad, close family, etc. But just that's what I prefer
Yep.
than to be out socializing. Yes, and so being that you're the Tin Man, I just want to mention that a lot of times when you think about anxiety, I want us to at least remember the lion who lacked courage.
Courage, yes.
And a lot of times in life, we'll find, and that's why I said, even doing something as simple as this or standing up speaking in public, or some people that have to attend social events,
Right.
maybe even alone, you feel some type of way. And it's like you have to get brave. Or have you been around people that they got to have 2 drinks before they can
the
actually
liquid
get out
courage,
there?
Yeah, liquid
Yes,
courage. But
yes,
I mean,
before they can get out
I mean,
there.
it's funny because, like I said, I could be in the club or I could be out with people. I won't let you immediately into my space.
Okay.
I have a space that you can play with. That's the furthest I would let a lot of people in. So they'll look at me like, is the man? I'm like, yeah, I know you, but I don't know you. By the end of the night, by the time I left, I might have met you, but if you make an impact, I forgot your name by the time I got in the car.
Okay. It sounds like you almost said something like boundaries.
Yeah,
At a certain
I have
point.
a
You have
boundary.
boundaries.
And it's not from me having anxiety, it's just who I am. I'm put it like this. It's crazy I can get on this platform and talk my face off. Put me in public. Put me in public speaking. I'm like, see, what had happened was,
Okay.
so
Yeah. Different
environments.
Yeah,
Even when I
changes things.
even when I ran track in high school and college, on the track I'm a whole nother person. But once I step off that track, I could care less who you are unless you're gonna give me some money or something. But I mean, that's how I was, and that's how it's just I'm not. It's not anxiety. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
Well, it might be anxiety, and I do want to say this:
Okay,
there's 264 million people across the globe that suffers from some form
Form
of
of
anxiety.
1
So,
out of 4. That's a lot.
I'm
1, 2,
just-
3, 4.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, because you wanted the characters, I wanted you to finish out the characters. And the last one is the Scarecrow. And, a lot of people have the anxiety or feeling of inadequacy, that they don't know something, they can't, be something. And those things can come from, other people's opinions of you as well. People put things in and he needed a brain to think for himself. But, a lot of anxiety come from things that people put on you. And that was one of the things that Scarecrow had. He didn't think that he was adequate enough. And that causes anxiety as well.
Yeah.
That's something, Clarence. That's a great point because growing up, you would be in a group setting with a bunch of your friends, and a lot of them, put it like this, it was at times where your dress code didn't match up. Your shoes didn't match up.
Right.
I don't know, slip and slides. And
Never had no slip and slides.
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
they're
but,
not up
I mean,
to the standard
It's
Right.
of
What
other people
would
around
say,
you.
what people would say, oh, you hang out with so and so, but he got on the newest Jordans and yours
Right.
is last year's.
Right.
But
Old ones.
yeah, you had the older ones. I've been in that situation, so it just like, it doesn't matter. And I got to the point where I didn't care about what somebody said about me because the simple fact how I dress, how what I wore, and who I hung out with doesn't always define you.
Yeah, that's true.
right.
That's true.
And that's good that you had that. But a lot of people
They can't cope with
they
that.
can't, and they can't get to that
Yes.
point. So that's good. I want to real quick, just a couple people share a personal anxiety and how you cope with that.
I think everybody knows that I am highly anxious, and that is a disorder. I've had it since when I played basketball, I had to wear Band-Aids on my fingers because I bit my fingers and nails until they bled. I've always talked quickly. I read quickly. Clarence will tease me because I'm always moving, or there are so many physical parts of it. But how I would describe it, I don't really have any particular thing that makes me anxious, because that's one of the differences between somebody that has anxiety about a date or a job, and then somebody over here who wakes up with anxiety and couldn't tell you for the life of them what it is that's even bothering them. So if you think of this voice that follows you around and reminds you of all of your insecurities all day long, all of your flaws, everything, to the point where it's the only voice that you hear. That is how I would describe somebody with debilitating anxiety. And as far as how do you cope, I tried to cope for a long time by myself. That didn't work. And like we say, when it starts to affect your work, your relationships, your home life, everything like that, it's time to look at how to do this. And the biggest coping skill for me is writing, getting feelings on paper. And medication. I mean, I take medication as well.
And that's good. And writing, that's therapeutic, and that helps.
Yep.
So real quick, because you mentioned one of the levels, so let's go ahead and go into the levels. There's different levels of anxiety.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the last one, which is the worst.
Yep.
The worst.
So let's deal with those.
Okay.
levels.
There are 5 levels of anxiety. The minimum, and that's the small feelings of worry, anxiousness, able to get things done and focus on tasks, little to no physical symptoms. So we all have something like that, you know. That's like that simple nervousness that, you know, be it, you know, like I say, going
Interview,
to interview,
anything.
going through.
Yes,
you
I
know,
was going to say going to a PTA meeting,
Yes.
meeting a parent,
Yes,
or
anything,
a teacher for
yeah.
the first time.
Art
or
That's a
first
couple
date, you know, just
First
you know,
date,
simple
yes.
things, you know. Then we have the mild, the anxiousness throughout the day, but not all day. Some changes in concentration and sleep, stomach aches, and muscle tension. So
I feel
that's
like I have
that.
that every day.
That's that anxiousness that maybe, you know, a bill you got to pay and you don't understand. And a lot of people living in poverty, they suffer this simple anxiety when they don't know, you know, if they're gonna have enough money to meet this or meet that. So you know, that's a common anxiety.
And when you say that, well, you know, the one that comes to mind for myself is for thinking I'm going to forget to pay a bill.
Right.
You know, so not that, okay, where does the money come from? But did I forget or, you know,
Right.
to make that bill?
Right. Then there's the moderate, that's stage 3. And that's when you are anxious most of the day. Something got you agitated, something that set you off, you know, and that could be worry, you know, maybe you're waiting on the diagnosis from a doctor or, you know, waiting for a call for a job, you know, you get that anxiousness during the day and it kind of like, you know, it messes with your sleep, your appetite, you know, you can't eat sometimes when you're super anxious, you know, court dates. You don't know what court date you're going to. I mean, let's be honest. You know,
I don't know if this one falls in there, but sometimes for some people, the police get behind you.
Get behind you, yeah.
Oh, you feel
sweat?
like you're in a drug cartel all of a sudden.
Hey, nowadays, look at me, and if a police get behind me, hey, and I'm not a seatbelt wearer, putting that seatbelt sitting straight up, you know, you get that anxiousness because you want to go home alive. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how that's going to transpire.
And I would have the drug cartel in my trunk, and he'd be like, "Have a good day. Go ahead and go."
And then there's the severe anxiety. That's where you're anxious all day. You know, you're feeling breathlessness. You know, that's when the panic attacks and things like that, you know, tend to happen. You know, you have digestive issues that cause other medical issues. You know, you're unable to focus.
Me at the dentist.
Yeah, sensory overload. You know, when you get to, you know, you can't, you know, get migraines. You get, your skin starts to itch. You know, those kind of things. You know, when you get anxious. And then there's the debilitating, which Jill touched on. That's severe. That's when it messes up your day. Sometimes you can't get out of bed. Sometimes you can't function at all.
You're a slave to anxiety.
It just shuts you down.
So that's when it becomes a disorder. Right?
Yeah, that's when it becomes a disorder, and that's when it's a diagnosis. You know, and you have so many physical, and it masks itself sometimes. You know, headaches, migraines, stomach aches, back aches, you know, muscle aches. It masks itself, but that's just your body being anxious and you're being over anxious, and those things happen to you
I had those pains. So I'm anxious. I just have those pains on a daily basis. Getting out of bed, be like, ooh, ah.
Well, I told you, Ian, you're built different.
No, I'm just saying everyday
a lot of
pains.
things that you might be dealing with may be a form of anxiety. You may not know it. And there's a lot of people that actually have to deal with anxiety, and they don't realize that's what
I just say the older I get, the more pains I feel.
And
that too.
In a scale of 1 to the moderate, you might not consider it, but in a moderate, say like you don't like your job or you really don't like going into your job, getting up, being able to make yourself go there every day, knowing that what you need to meet,
and
that
dealing
gives
with
you
certain people.
Yes, that gives you an anxious.
And
I deal with certain. Yeah, I do. with certain
I'm glad you
people
said
already.
that, because a good way also to look at it is, so a normal anxiety is something that is short term. So as soon as you get done with the interview, you're like, okay, that's short term.
Right.
So it comes and it goes. An anxiety disorder is more of something that persists until it, it attempts to take up space in your mind. So it is more permanent than short term. And a lot of people say, well, once I figure out, so going back to the job anxiety, what is the reason for the anxiety? The interview. The anxiety disorder, what is the reason for the anxiety?
No reason.
I don't know. So it's hard for people to say, find out what makes you anxious, because that's the root of it. Anxiety doesn't go away. You can cope with it. You can take medication, but it is something that is going to persist. And like when you mentioned, the jobs, employment, I think also what I did is over the years, I figured out that, hey, I need to, as far as my career, be in a leadership role, which sounds completely opposite from what somebody in my position and headspace would want to do. But what it does for me, if I get up in the morning and the anxiety is off the charts, I have to go to work. I'm responsible for people. So what it does for me is it keeps me, I don't have a choice. So one of my coping things is really to be a workaholic and to be in a leadership role, because when you're thinking about that, you're not thinking about this.
About your issues or problems. So it leads me to this. Is there a good side to anxiety?
Actually, yes, it is. It's like I was reading this article. There's 7 surprising good things about anxiety, and you hit on one of them: leadership. You hit on actually 2 of them: motivation, resilience. Actually, that's you 3 and 3 right now.
It's like I'm a whole expert on it.
Yeah, cautiousness, longevity, warning signs, and empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And good leadership. So I mean, we so busy talk about the bad side of anxiety, and if you go through that list is some of the most powerful things that makes a human who they are.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And so that's one of the things we wanted to talk about, the normal versus the
Yeah.
anxiety disorder. So we know that there's a difference.
Right.
And so, I would say for myself, when I'm anxious about a test, it pushes me to study harder. And so I don't care at what cost, I'm not going to stop till it's over,
Right.
basically till I'm facing the test. And so that's a good thing.
Right.
And so for other people, I'm sure there's some motivation connected to it. Some people deal with their anxiousness by going to the gym and working out.
Right.
And then they have great results because of something that was supposedly negative.
Right.
But they took that negative and made it a positive.
And I would say this because looking at this scale, and there's something that happened today. There was a active shooter in downtown Atlanta. And what I'm saying, how I'm gonna connect this, because some of the people, they had this, something ain't right kind of feeling. So, they got out of the place where they were and they did. So sometimes self-preservation, the anxiousness of, just not feeling your environment, that can help you, because you become over aware and conscious of where you are, especially if you're in a strange place. And I don't know, I used to be in clubs only for business, but legitimate.
Sure.
Only for business. Only for business.
What kind of clubs?
Hey,
Only for business. Only for business.
I was a music promoter.
You would see things and you would get a feeling and you would get out of there before things, escalated. So your anxiousness is like, it ain't the environment in the air is not right anymore.
I know.
So you remove yourself.
I call that man up above. That's just me.
Oh no! And then
when I feel like that let me know. God let me know I need to move, and I need to move quickly.
Right.
Okay, so
It's not
thank
me
God
being
for the way He built us. So
Right.
I've talked before about the amygdala, that lizard brain.
Right.
So the whole fight or flight. So what happens a lot of times when we're dealing with anxiety or a panic attack,
Right.
that anxiety or that adrenaline is released in our bodies. And so once that adrenaline is released, you can fight to the end, like David and Goliath, or the Daniel and the lions did.
Right.
You know, you fighting a big giant animal,
Right.
and you still got stamina. You can still keep going. You've heard people
Right.
lift cars off
Yes.
of people. That's the adrenaline that's happening.
And
so
that comes from an anxious moment.
anxious, or you can run
Right.
until you are safe. And so, but here's the flip side of that. If that adrenaline is released and it's a false fear, what happens now? You can be in trouble,
Yeah, that's
because
when you
that
get
same oxygen has been released. But what are you going to do with it when you find out, when you walked around the corner, it wasn't
Yeah.
an intruder,
Exactly.
it was a cat.
Yeah.
And boom, here you are now. The adrenaline is already flowing.
Yeah.
And that's when you can start to notice all these other negative
Right.
symptoms happening
Exactly.
to your body.
And think about, like, it's exhausting. You know, you the analogy that you just had, you know, you walk around the corner, and when you have anxiety, you almost pray that there's something there, because if there's not, you are going to feel like that throughout the day. So that is where your headaches come from.
That's right.
Your stomach aches, because you always feel. That's why people think they'll fidget.
That's right.
They're always just, you know, thinking. Eric mentioned empathy. People with anxiety disorder are usually the most empathetic people, because they are so worried about what other people think of them and what people think when they walk in a room, that they know what it feels like. And so that's why they are empathetic towards other people, because they don't ever want anybody else to feel that way.
That's right. Now, so let's think about the difference between women and men. Because a lot of times, you know, I've heard people say women are so emotional. We just worry too much, and etc. So I did some research, and this was interesting. So sure enough, women have a greater anxiety disorder, 23.4%, compared to men at 14.3%. And this was interesting, even at a young age. So when you look at your childhood, and you wouldn't think that there was a big difference, or that young people had a lot of anxiety. But when you think about the things that they're going through, especially the things in secret that they have to deal with.
Right.
And we know what those types of dark things are that can follow you over into
Yes.
adulthood. So even with the young girls, it's 3.0 to 1.5 for the young boys.
And that's where I said earlier, sometimes your environment instills your anxiety. It could be a trauma. You know, my daughter was in 2 car accidents, and now she's briefly dealing with,
Absolutely.
she don't want to drive right now.
Yes.
But there's some traumas and things that goes on that brings, like you were saying, some young ladies have suffered some traumas, and that brings on anxiety, you know. But also, here's what it is where it happens between men and women. Women are, especially young girls, think about you as a young girl, your mother, your grandmother, whoever primps you or whatever, they always tell you how a lady carries herself. And they put so much weight on women, on how to look, how to dress, how to act, how to walk, how to talk. So leaving your house, before you leave your house as a young woman, you already got a weight of the world on you. So you got
That
to
you
make
carry
sure. Yeah. So you got
into
to make
adulthood.
sure. For young men, we don't have that.
Beg to differ. Beg to differ.
Why do you say that?
Beg to differ because young man, if a young man have a father in his household, a father's gonna teach his young boy how to be dressed, how to conduct himself in front of a woman, how to conduct himself to a woman, how he should present himself as he out in the world. So it's the same weight of the world on their shoulders. It's the same thing as well. And here's the other part about this. A young man has so much pressure because now I gotta work. I have to take care of my family. I have to do this. I have to do that to prove that I am a man. So it's the same way of the world. And then he has to fight the world.
And I feel like women doing the same thing.
But
So
I mean,
everything you
you're
just
right.
said, it seems like nowadays
Yeah. So you have to
That's
look at
happening
it's
on-
a balance.
that's happening on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have to face the world. We have to get out there. We have to deal with some things. So I've heard people say that they have a social anxiety disorder, but yet some people may call them anti-social,
I don't
but
think
they don't really know the truth.
I don't
And
think
so
they're
let's-
antisocial.
let's talk
I
about that.
honestly believe they're just introverts.
Introverts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all they really are.
Yes, but what about this disorder? There's a problem.
Well,
There
I mean,
is-
I honestly, I'm just gonna say my personal opinion. I don't believe in that because the simple fact, some people are just plain introverts.
Right.
I like
period.
how you think that, but and
But-
Jill, I'm
Let
gonna
me
let
hit
you
Jill.
cover that. But I was gonna say sometimes when it actually is the social antisocial disorder, or not antisocial, but the social anxiety disorder, it paralyzes people to the point that they can't move forward in life in
just me.
certain settings.
So
Jill,
I also call a person, so I look at an introvert being over here and a person who has social anxiety disorder over here. And here's the difference. So if you are an introvert, you could be out somewhere, and then when you get home in your space, you recharge when you're alone. So somebody with the social anxiety disorder actually has, it's not just that they don't want to be around people or that they are whatever. They have a direct and rooted fear of those situations. So when they go home for the night, unlike the introvert, they are not going to recharge and just feel better, like, I'm at home, away from all that, I feel so much better. Because it like I said, it doesn't go away. So solitude will help the introvert recharge, but it'll only provide temporary relief for somebody with a true social anxiety disorder.
okay, I'm glad you said that, because when we start talking about coping is merely a Band-Aid on something. But how do we actually?
No,
wanna
I
say
want
something?
to. Yeah,
I just want to say, but how do we actually help ourselves be delivered from and no longer be a slave to anxiety?
One is we have to understand the difference between coping and covering up. Most of us are great at covering up and not good at coping at all. So until you recognize whether you're coping or covering up, that's going to be the first step. And what I say, and Jill mentioned it in her speech, is that she throws herself into being a workaholic. That's covering up. That's really not coping. So you got to figure out the difference, which is coping and which is covering up. And like I say, most of us are good actors and we cover it up because we don't want people to know, or we don't want to deal with it. So we just cover it up or we mask it and do other things.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
first of all, you
Exactly.
just got to know if you're coping and if you're covering up versus coping.
Okay, and I want you to look at it as the covering up. Look at the covering, but I want you to look at recovering. Period. So there's the covering up, and then there's recovery. How do we recover? And so a lot of that has to do with some physical things we can do. And I know, Eve, we shared and we talked about a couple of those things, but one that people downplay is breathing.
Yep.
And so taking those breaths throughout the day and knowing when you're getting ready to face something, because, just like how some people deal with depression and certain things that has happened in their lives, those things they already happened.
Right.
But a lot of times with us in anxiety, it's the things that we're expecting to happen or we think might happen. And so we have to understand that a lot of what is necessary for us to get to the recovery place
Right.
has to do with our mind change and our mind shifting. And in order to shift our minds, we always talk about it. We got to protect our mind, but we have to change our thoughts. And so a lot of that has to do with self-talking, talking
Yep.
ourselves off the ledge, talking ourselves out of feeling a certain way.
Yep.
And so how do we continue the recovery process?
Well, you had just said something that I actually have in my notes that is very prominent. So a lot of people talk about, speak to yourself positive thoughts. I say speak to yourself with positive thoughts of reality. So a lot of times when you are in the middle of a panic attack and it does feel like you're having a heart attack or a stroke,
Yes.
the breathing is huge. There's also another thing called a 3x3. And it's a grounding strategy. It kind of brings you back to where you need to be. And basically what you do is 3 things you can see in the room. So V, camera, cup. 3 things that you can hear. Focuses makes you listen to certain things. And 3 parts of your body. And this all sounds silly, but what it does is takes your focus off of what's happening here physically so that you don't go into a full-blown
Self-scanning.
out of control.
That's right.
Yes. So it focuses the attention on things that are in your immediate space, getting rid of some of that stress. So
That's
all of
right.
that stuff is massive.
And I like that you left us with a number when you said the 3 by 3. And then so my number for breathing is the 5 by 7. And so that's in for 5 seconds. Just all the way in, suck it up, and then out for 7. Yes, to relax. And then I want you to imagine yourself as water. You get a big ocean, and I want you to understand that the surface, that's where all the rippling and the currents and everything is affected on the surface, and that's the way we are. But when you're having an anxiety attack and you need to calm down, you need to pretend that you're in the depths of the water and you're way below the level where anything can move you. And that's where you need to stay calm, and you need to stay there and breathe. You have to have things that's going to help you. Some other things, self-care. And we hear people talking about it, but what is self-care? Self-care is not just you taking a hot bubble bath. Self-care is not you pampering yourself for a moment. Self-care has to happen every day.
Disconnect.
It has to happen every day. But if you're a person that suffers from any type of anxiety disorders, because there's so many.
Right.
And I knew we weren't going to be able to get to all of them, but so there's the PTSD, OCD, and the the social anxiety we talked about, and a lot of other phobias, specific phobias.
Agoraphobia.
Yes. And so with those things, what we need to do is write down 10 things that make us feel good. Those are, we get to be selfish. It's okay. And you write those 10 things down, and you pick one, and you do it every day. And you do that until the end of time, because that's for you, and you deserve to pamper yourself and take care of you, because anxiety is real, and we don't need to be a slave to anxiety. And I want to make sure that we don't forget what the Bible has to say about anxiety, because it says a lot. Anything y'all want to share? Any favorite scriptures you have that you stand on when it comes to being anxious?
Be anxious for nothing.
Okay.
Be anxious for nothing.
Anybody else? Anybody else got
Haven't
a
I
good
not
one?
told you go out in courage?
Say it again. Say it
Have
loud.
I not told you go out in courage?
Okay. All right.
Be encouraged. I mean, that's the simplest thing.
Okay.
Sometimes I honestly understand after reading a lot of this. A lot of times with anxiety is all about encouraging yourself, and that's one thing a lot of people do not do on a daily basis. And that's one thing I do. I mean, I sit in the mirror like, hey, dog, we finna handle this today.
Okay.
Regardless of
That's
what.
it. Self-talking.
Yeah, and I mean, having that self-conversation a lot of times will help with the anxiety.
Yes, that's right. Michael Jackson said it, didn't he?
Man in the mirror.
He said start with the man in the mirror. So listen, do not force yourself into facing your fears. So we have to leave you with this, because we are not experts by any means, and we're sharing personal experiences and our personal research findings to help people deal with to the best of our knowledge. But you do need to seek professional help if you are suffering from any type of anxiety disorder. We could get into some other essentials, certain teas that calm you down, the chamomile and lavender and etc. Different essential oils to help you relax. And so that's what it boils all down to, is being able to relax. Remember, one of my favorite things when I think about the Bible is when Jesus was on the boat. And what was he doing in the midst of the storm? He was sleeping. He was so calm and sleeping. And so I want to leave us with this. Here's a good scripture. Matthew, do not be anxious. Remember when you talk about
Be
the
anxious for
lilies in the
nothing.
valley?
Yes.
I love that. Matthew 6:25-34. Do not be anxious about tomorrow, because tomorrow will be anxious about itself. That's deep right there. And then listen at this one. Peter 5:6-7, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. So beautiful. I want to make sure I leave you with this last one. Philippians 4:7, and the peace of God, which
This
surpasses
is all understanding.
all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus, in Christ Jesus. Amen. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is Neutral Voices in Depth, and we will see you next time. Good night.
Always going.
Oh, always. Always go on to say it, E.
Always protect your mind.
Always protect.
I was like, she forgot.
Thank
She
you.
forgot us.
Oh, I forgot. Thank you. Have a good night.
Bless your heart.